Cody Campbell, Texas Tech, billionaire, mega booster, now college sports power broker. He has the Big Ten, the SEC, Fox, and ESPN all shook, man. We have confirmation, and they gave us the proof on a silver platter this weekend. And this all stems from Cody Campbell's campaign to push for changing the Sports Broadcasting Act to include college sports in that, which would allow college sports to pool their media rights all together as one entity like the NFL does, as opposed to conferences doing their own separate media deals. The idea and the basic premise here is Cody Campbell suggests that upwards of like 5, 6, 7 billion extra dollars could come in to be distributed to the schools if you did that, because pooling them together generally is going to bring a higher price. And so doing that would create a bunch of extra money for schools. In fact, I think the number that some believe on that is that it could be like an extra up to $50 million per year per school if you're one of the schools on the top end of the food chain. And so it's a ton of extra money being left on the table that could then be used to fund. Cody Campbell's big push is, hey, we want to make sure Olympic sports are still well funded here and stuff's not getting cut, and athletic departments aren't going to go broke when they now have to pay $20 million in rev share every year, right? That's his push. The SEC and the Big Ten don't like that because that would, in theory, take away some of their power. Now, you can argue, and I'll talk about this more in a moment, you can argue how the money gets distributed, which Cody Campbell, I think, is not trying to take away. He's not trying to make this a total, I've seen people calling it like socialism and all that stuff. He's not trying to distribute evenly to everybody. It would still be unevenly distributed based on who's pulling their weight with the brand and on-field performance and all that stuff. Okay, but he wants to add more money to the pie here so that schools are not going to have to cut a bunch of things and you won't have schools just totally underwater financially. Well, he's been running some ads about that. You've seen the Sports Broadcasting Act ads that have been out there. So it has been happening, but he wanted to go a step further with a new ad this week. And this ad, you're going to notice, is a little bit different because it has a different target in mind here that he takes some shots at. So this is the ad that Cody Campbell wanted to air this weekend. Let's get this fired up for you.
From the fans in the stands to the student athletes on the field, we all love college sports. But to conference commissioners, it's all about money and control. Their greed is bankrupting all but the biggest schools. And women's sports and Olympic programs everywhere are paying the price. Congress must act now to modernize media rights for college sports so programs can thrive and nobody gets left behind. Join the team. Let's save college sports together.
Okay, that's it. May seem innocuous enough, but obviously the big piece there is that he was going after the commissioners. He's calling the commissioners greedy, which, I mean, I think that's pretty much just an objective fact. That doesn't mean that they're doing their job poorly by the letter of the law. Everybody is acting in their conference's best interest, but that's generally produced a lot of greed here. I think a lot of it is very short-sighted, and it will produce diminishing returns for them in the end. A smaller pie that they would then have all of, but the pie will continue to get smaller and smaller instead of taking their place with a pretty big slice of a very big pie that could be bigger by utilizing the Sports Broadcasting Act here. But what happened is that ad was not ran. Cody Campbell, who is a multi-billionaire, once again, obviously has the money to pay for these. Fox and ABC did not run them during the games as was paid for, and they went through and followed the entire process that you would typically go through to get these submitted, and they were told no. That's a pretty big deal, okay? I mean, now we're sitting here like, wait, hold up. And the reporting on this was that like Cody Campbell was told it was a business decision, I believe, from Fox. And if you're starting to wonder, okay, well, why? Why would they put their foot down here? And why this, but the other ads were fine? Well, they're coming after the commissioners now. Cody is coming after the commissioners right now and pointing this out. And the commissioners have a lot of deep conversations here with these TV networks, right? And if you go look at who is the most upset at Cody Campbell right now, it's the Big Ten. Big Ten Twitter is just, they hate the guy. I mean, I put out a couple of tweets on Saturday about Cody Campbell, and my mentions were just filled with Big Ten fans who hated him and calling him a grifter and all these different things, right? The Big Ten is who's really upset. The Big Ten is who is pushing the most awful ideas right now and being called out by people like Pat Forty, thankfully, but the national media is starting to call them out. They've got a lot of power. They are the most like, hey, let's make this a professional model. Who cares about anybody that gets trampled along the way? And so if you're going to call out the commission, potentially jeopardize where the commission is standing right now, what the commission of the Big Ten wants. Yeah, Fox they've got a pretty sweetheart deal with the Big Ten right now. They're pretty deeply in bed with the Big Ten right now. So it makes sense that they would kind of stand up for their dude right now. But I think this is kind of blowing up in their faces because this has riled up a lot of people. Okay. You're talking about now like a censorship type of issue, right? I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to like the political landscape or like who's in office right now and all that stuff. Cody Campbell's pretty well connected there. Again, it's been reported before by Ross Dellinger that he's got a direct line to the president. You can bet that this has really riled a lot of people up that have some influence. And at the same time, it has definitely generated a lot more discussion about this. And this is in a climate where we've already seen a new bill that has been proposed called the SAFE Act that actually includes amending the Sports Broadcasting Act. So Cody Campbell's idea has now made it into something that could potentially be law. Now, people are going to tell you there's like no chance of that happening in its current exact form, but there's at least a draft of it out there now. So Cody Campbell has made measurable progress on this so far, and I'm sure that's a part of the calculus too. Everybody looking around like, man, this guy is already making moves, is being very aggressive. He's not taking this lying down, and we've got to stop this. Like this is a legitimate threat being posed to Big Ten and SEC complete dominance right now. So that's the situation we've got. Now, I will be very surprised if this is the end of it. I will be very surprised if it's, we don't hear of any of this anymore and Cody just gives, like, I think eventually you're probably going to see these things on TV. That would be my guess, just based on the climate that we're in right now. But we shall see. And, I saw a lot of the discussion here. Look, people were giving me pushback. Like, are you sure that you should be supporting, as a K-State guy, what Cody Campbell is pushing? And then, those from like the Big Ten side, oh, what is his plan even? He wants to put the government in charge of college sports. You get all these wild things, all this pushback on Cody Campbell. I really think it's pretty simple here. Cody Campbell wants to amend the Sports Broadcasting Act to allow all of the schools to pool their media rights together to make sure that all of this is written in a way that the entire NCAA, like you'd be pooling all those rights together and it couldn't be, hey, the SEC and Big Ten go off and do their own thing. Because I've heard that brought up as pushback. What if you did this and then the SEC and Big Ten joined up and did their rights together? I think that would have to be like kind of legislated in this thing that everybody does it together, maximize the amount of money for everybody. And then you would have a tiered kind of revenue system where it's distributed more to the bigger brands. And so SEC, Big Ten, the big schools there can still keep their foot at the top of the mountain in all of this. But what it would do is it would take away the Big Ten and the SEC from literally being the only ones that can make decisions on anything, right? Because the idea here would be that you'd have some kind of third party that would handle the money and distribute it. And it would be a neutral third party. And I think there's room for negotiation on that. This has not been an instance where Cody Campbell has come out and said, well, it would have to be the government that does this. No, I think there's a lot of room for negotiation on who it would actually be that does this. It's also something that would be way far down the road. And this is where you kind of get the feeling like, man, people opposed to this, SEC Big Ten, feels like bad actors here because the pushback that you get on it right now is that the SEC, like Greg Sankey has said, well, we believe in sticking to our media deals. We're locked in a media deal as a conference right now. We're not going to renege on that. So of course we don't support this. Well, that's not what Cody Campbell or anybody is saying here by opening up the Sports Broadcasting Act. They're all talking about doing stuff 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road when the contracts all expire. Nobody is saying, you don't, just because the Sports Broadcasting Act changes doesn't mean that you then everybody immediately just loses their current media deal. No, you honor the rest of the deal, and then at the end of it, maybe some leagues make a 1 or 2 year deal to sync up the timing on all this, and then bam, there you go. And I think, to me, it really is pretty objectively better for the overall health of the college sports ecosystem. I know I saw like Justin earlier saying, hey, what about G6? That's another bit of pushback that you'll get when people start talking about this. To me, this does more good for more member institutions of college sports than anything else out there, and for sure is much better for everybody than the way that things are headed right now, the way everything is getting so concentrated and hyper-capitalist at the top. So I think from kind of like a utilitarianism standpoint, like doing more good for everybody, to me, this makes a whole lot of sense. And I think a lot of this really just comes down to you've got the real power brokers, the Big Ten and the SEC, not wanting to relinquish any power or do something that like would take, this is a shot at greedy commissioners. Like this would take some level of power out of two commissioners' hands in the Big Ten and the SEC if things did change like this, even if their schools would be making more money, right? So no one ever wants to give up money and power, but I think it's going to be a battle to see where this all turns out. There's a lot going on. You have the SCORE Act that's out there. You have the SAFE Act. If you want any idea of how wild things are and how unpredictable it seems as to where this winds up, the SAFE Act, which just came out, was proposed by Democrats, and it is basically everything that was in Donald Trump's executive order, except with the Sports Broadcasting Act piece of it, which is what Cody Campbell wants. So you've got two, obviously, Republicans there, and it's the Democrat bill, the SAFE Act, that has everything that they were putting forth, right? And so it's like Ted Cruz, and the SCORE Act is not like that, but it's what the SEC and the Big Ten want, because it would give them all the antitrust exemptions where they could enforce basically anything except for revenue sharing. And yeah, it's going to be wild to see where this all ends up. It's going to be convoluted and messy, but I think the big takeaway here is, for me at least, Cody Campbell is making an impact. He is pushing back hard, and nobody is taking this lying down. And I would extend even some of this to the playoff discussion. Nobody took 4-4-2-2 lying down from the Big 12 or the ACC. And now the latest reporting was the Big Ten's starting the bidding at the negotiations right now. Like, all right, fine. What if we did something where we all get 3 or 4 auto bids? Nobody is taking this stuff without a fight. And I think that's what the Big Ten and the SEC are finding out now, is like, hey, there's some real legitimate pushback here, and you're going to have to deal with that. So I hope that's not too complicated. I know it's really easy to get down in the weeds of all this stuff right now. But that to me was an eye-catching story, and I don't think it's the end of it on what's going to happen with these ads that Cody Campbell is trying to run.